Hello everyone. Today is March 23rd, 2018, and this is our session number 3 on the Wyckoff method and Chinese markets. And my name is Roman Bogomazov, and today I'm again with my student, Zhao Goben, and he will be helping me translating today's material.
各位朋友，大家好，今天是2018年3月23日。今天呢，这是我们的第3次视频，而且做我翻译的仍旧是我的学生赵国本先生。
In today's session, we'll quickly stop at the definitions of the distribution, and we'll talk a little bit about the upthrust action. We'll talk about the last point of supply and sign of weakness.
今天呢，我们会简短的看一下派发区间的示意图，然后我们看一看，讲一下上冲回落，讲最后供应点和弱势信号。
On the market side, we will start looking at the sector analysis, and we'll go through 4 sectors today on the weekly and daily charts.
今天我们将讲3个上证的行业指数，我们会看一看它的周线图和日线图。
We really appreciate all of the feedback that we're getting, the emails that you send us, the comments that you leave for our videos. We really appreciate that. And please do contact us, tell us what you think about the videos, and give us some kind of feedback on those.
在我们贴上这个视频以后呢，有一些朋友给我们发了信息，回了邮件。我们非常感谢，然后呢，也希望各位朋友把你们的想法，把你们的要求，告诉我们，通过邮件或者是通过在网上留言的方式告诉我们都可以，谢谢。
I also want to point your attention to this link right here that goes to our US website, and this website contains an article on Wyckoff method that was translated by Goben and his associate, and you could read it in Chinese.
我们呢也在这里提醒一下，有一个网页，这里面网页里讲了魏科夫交易的基本知识，这个也是由赵国本参与翻译的。
And here is this first initial page, and you could see that it's the article that was written by me and my colleagues for stockcharts.com, and we translated this. It's on our website. So please go and read this article. It contains basic information on Wyckoff method.
这就是我刚才说的那个网页的首页。大家可以看到，这是我的团队给 stockcharts.com 这编写的。现在我们把它翻译成中文，放到我的网页上。这就是魏科夫交易分析方法的基本知识。
All right, well, now let's talk a little bit about the accumulation. This is the slide that we have not given to you before. We have not translated this, and now Goben had an opportunity to translate this slide, and this is how it looks on the accumulation side.
现在我们简短的介绍一下吸筹区间的事件。这个事件，这个幻灯片以前没有给大家，国本已经把它翻成中文，现在我们把它放在这里讲一下。
I would like you to study this slide, and we will come back to this slide in later videos. I think our emphasis today should be on the distribution again, just because of what the market is doing. We've seen a lot of movements to the downside, so we want, and those movements have distribution qualities to it. So we want to talk more about the distribution, but please do study this slide for next videos.
这里把这张幻灯片给大家，请大家自学一下。那么今天呢，我们就不细讲了。我们相反呢，我们要讲一下派发区间的事件。因为什么？因为现在市场更向于派发，所以说我们着重按照市场的方面去讲。
So let's talk about the distribution right now, and specifically, I want to concentrate on 3 of the definitions today. an upthrust, a last point of supply, and a sign of weakness.
那么今天呢，我们先看一下那个派发区间，在这个派发区间里，它着重讲一下上冲回落，最后供应点和弱势信号。刚才他圈的测试，其实他因为他不知道中文，所以说圈成测试。其实我们要讲上冲回落。
As I've already explained through the phase analysis, the phase C is the last final test of the demand that we have at the points of the resistance. This is where there might be an attempt to overcome the resistance with the higher high, and attempt to commit, and then a subsequent failure that follows after that.
我们以前讲过这个阶段，在阶段 C 的时候，这里会产生最后一次测试。这个测试呢，是对前2次的情况的测试，也是对我看啊，对这个 demand 的测试，也就是需求的测试。在这个测试完以后呢，如果是测试失败了，那么就有可能大家对这个供应和派发区间有更清楚的认识。而这个测试呢，最后的测试有可能会产生新高，这是它比较迷惑人的一个地方。
The weak hands are going to be excited to be buyers in this area, as they were excited also to be the buyers on the last climactic run that we have had into the climactic action. So characteristics of the climactic action and the upthrust itself might look similar, with the increase in spread, with the increase in velocity, but yet the intention behind the upthrust will always fail. It will commit temporarily to the upside, and then almost instantly will come back into the trading range.
在这个阶段呢，那么弱手，也就是弱势，也就是散户，或者是代表一些个比较弱的交易者，他们可能会感到非常兴奋，感到那种好的势头又来了，就像在抢购高潮的那一波一样，大家开始狂买。在这个阶段出现的有可能是什么？价差增大，然后上升速度加快，而且他们有可能这次也可能要突破了。但是呢，所有的这个突破的意图最终会失败，而失败以后呢，价格就会跌回到区间之内。
Because weak hands are going to be excited about buying, we're going to label this as a second point of excitement for weak hands. And meanwhile, as weak hands are excited that they could go in and open this position in a relatively slightly oversold condition, the big hands, the smart money, institutional money is going to sell into this strength.
由于弱手他们在这段时间要狂买，所以说这是一个怎么说呢？一个狂热阶段，所以我们把它这一段阶段叫做2次狂热。而这个弱手呢，他在买的时候有可能会在区间的底下买，然后呢从这个区间底下买，一直买到上面。而大机构他会在这个顶上，在这个区间的顶上开始大量的卖。
Because of these two actions by these groups of participants, sometimes on the actual upthrust we might see the increase of effort or increase in the volume signature. So that would suggest that weak hands are producing a poor demand, and strong hands are producing good supply.
由于这2种不同的力量在同时工作，也就是说弱手在买，而大机构在卖。这个时候呢，有可能会在上冲回落的那个阶段里出现一种情况，那就是弱手他的购买力会越来越低，而这些大机构他的这些强手他的卖会大量的去卖。
by the definition, the upthrust is a temporary commitment above the level of the resistance that was created in phases A and in phases B, and then almost instant comeback of the price into the trading range. And therefore, a failure would be defined by that comeback of the price into the trading range.
根据定义来说，上冲回落就是它出现了新高，突破了前期的阻力线，然后但是这个突破呢是短暂、特别简短的突破，然后立刻由于它又跌回到区间之内，而跌回到区间之内，我们大家就看到，那么也就是这个突破失败，叫上冲回落了。
The next point of interest for us is the last point of supply. And usually this is the rally that would have much weaker qualities than any of the rallies that we have seen before in the trading range.
下面一个我们要讲的一点就是最后派发点或者最后供应点，在这一点我们可以看到一些反弹，而这个反弹或者是上升，这个上升呢，在跟以前的所有上升比，它是最弱的。
The last point of supply rallies are going to be also a part of the change of character, which is going to be defined by the sign of weakness and the last attempt to rally back into the trading range and the subsequent failure. So this whole area right here is defined as a change of character for us, and last point of supply are the rallies within that change of character structure.
也就是最后派发点呢，它也是特性改变中的一个组成部分，和整个这一段的下降阶段，也就是这弱势信号，也就是弱势信号产生的这个下降波段，这个里面，它们共同组成了特性改变。
In a lot of instances, you will see how the behavior of the price and the volume signatures are going to change in this area in phases C and D. On the way down, we might see the increase in spread to the downside. We also might see the increase of the supply signature. And then on the LPSY rallies, we might see contracting demand, or we might see expanding demand with the result that is failing. That would also suggest some kind of inability of the price to rally and would indicate a short-term bearish bias.
在整个这个特性改变的这个过程中，我们可能会看到很多成交量方面的变化。比方说，这个价差可能会增大，然后呢，供应量可能会增大。在这个最后派发点或者最后供应点的这个上升阶段，我们有可能要么会遇到这个需求减低，或者呢，我们可能看到另外一种情况下，需求很大，但是它的结果，也就是它的上升的这个价差呀，或者是距离啊，会减小，整个这个加起来，它显示出来这个是一个熊市的信号，弱势信号。
One of the characteristics for the sign of weakness and definitional characteristics is the commitment below the area of the support that was created by the lows in phases A and B. We want to see that commitment because it tells us that the price cannot stay above the support, and structurally it's a show of the weakness. And then the subsequent rally we want to see to rally into the area of the support, and for that area of the support to become the resistance. That would show the underlying weakness both on the commitment to the downside and on the inability of the price to come back significantly into the trading range.
弱势信号的特点呢，就是价格跌到支撑线以下。这个支撑线的定义是根据阶段 A 和阶段 B 的低点来定义的。那么弱势信号呢，它就是价格跌到以下，并且在这个下面停留。而且它每次的企图回到交易区间都非常弱，被这个支撑线，现在支撑变成了阻力线，被这个阻力线或者这个支撑线，也这个下缘所阻挡。
So for today, this is kind of like a quick lesson for us. This is a very interesting area right now because a lot of the sector charts that we're going to go through today have those type of characteristics where the reactions are expanding as the price goes down, and the volume signature is also expanding. So those are the elements and qualities of the distribution, or at least an increase of the volatility. So it was important for us to go through these elements today. Please do study this slide and memorize the characteristics of the distribution so that next time you will be more familiar with all of the elements of the distribution.
那么今天呢，我们在这里就简单介绍一下，因为这一周市场的情况，很多地方和这个比较相像，尤其是我们要讲的行业的这个指数，请大家自己自学一下，然后把很多的特点大家能够记熟，所以以后大家见到类似情况下，立刻就可以认出来。
Now let's look at some of the sectors that we want to go through. So this is the list of all of the sectors. And
那么下面呢，Go ahead.
And today we're just going to cover 4 of them, and we're going to look at the weekly and the daily for these sectors.
下面就是列出的行业指数，共有10个。那么今天呢，我们先讨论前4个。
All right, well, let's look at the first one. This is the energy, and this is the weekly chart.
下面我们先看一看上证能源的周线图。
And usually I tend to look at the big picture first, especially with the charts that I don't regularly look at. So I definitely would like to get a sense of where we are. Here we have the high in 2015, then a big move to the downside. And obviously this was a big deal for the US markets as well when Chinese markets went down like this. Then we had a stop in action in phase A, and then a very clearly defined phase B, where the character of the move was somewhat more subdued and did not overcome the resistance that was created in phase A.
那么我们先看一下长期图，这就是我的这个看图习惯、读图习惯，尤其是我在看自己不熟悉的图的时候，我都要先看一下长期趋势、长期图。那么从这个上证能源的周线图上呢，我们看到2015年的这个比较快速的上升和下降，而这个下降呢，不只是对中国就是说什么，就是大家很显著，在对于美国市场来说也是非常显著的。那么下降完以后呢，我们可以看到它这个阶段 A， 然后呢后面这个2016年3月份以后，它走的是阶段 B。都是非常的符合阶段 B 的特点，而且阶段 B 呢，整个来说它没有突破阶段 A 的那个高点。
We've talked about different behaviors in different phases, so you could see how the volatility in phase A is so different than the behavior in phase B, and now going into this area, we definitely see the increase in volatility. And we see how this last attempt to commit to the upside actually has failed, which has the attributes of the upthrust action.
我们看到每一个阶段它都有每一阶段的不同的特点。我们看到的阶段 A 的特点，阶段 B 呢，没它的这个比较慢的运动。看到了阶段 C 的时候，我们看到它的 volatility， 也就是它的上升和下降的速度。它的幅度都增大了。
We talked in the last 2 sessions about a potential structural interpretation in this area right here. So we said that one of the scenarios could be that we are in the potential phase C of a much longer term accumulation. And the second scenario was that we are in the potential phase D of a distribution. And what's crucial for us is just to recognize some of the elements of the distribution and accumulation and make that determination. But one of the important things tactically is that one way or another, first scenario or the second one, we still would be expecting the price to go probably to the area of the support, maybe into the cluster between the lows that were created in phases A and B, and just to retest this area again.
根据最后这种情况呢，我们提到了这里面可能会出现两种情况。一种情况呢，就是它是吸筹阶段的阶段 C， 然后呢它可能会就是说正在吸筹。另外一个呢，就是说它是派发阶段的阶段 D。即使是第一种阶段的话，这个价格的走向也可能会继续下行，而去测试阶段 B 甚至于阶段 A 它们的低点。
As we look at the most recent price action on this chart, we could identify where volatility has increased with the increase in volume signature, so supply is coming in, and it's so different than anything what we've seen before. So this should give us a little bit of the hesitation, and the whole idea behind the upthrust is the failure to advance above the resistance. Also gives us some thoughts about the distribution that is might be taking place right here.
那么我们看看最近的这个情况，这个最近阶段的它的价格行为和以前下降时候的价格行为有显著的不同，它的 volatility 也就是它这个波动性和这个下降的速度啊幅度啊都加大了。上冲回落它最主要的特点就是说它突破失败，它突破前期的阻力位失败，然后跌回到交易区间之内。而且同时呢，我们看到它的供应量增加了。
Let's look at the daily chart to identify these patterns in a better, clearer way.
那我们看一下日线图，最近的图可能会日线图最近的情况比较就是更加清晰。
We see that around this area right here, we have that element of the upthrust where the price tries to commit first time above, comes back into the trading range. The reaction seems to be okay. It's not a deep reaction. It doesn't even come to 1/2 of the range. And we have a really good run right here. So we would be assuming that there's going to be some kind of continuation. But then volatility increases in this area right here. And look how consistent the selling is in this area. So there is somewhat of an excitement by weak hands to get into the position, and then some selling that institutions are providing in this area. That selling brings the price down and accelerates the move to the downside.
我们看到这张图啊，它有2次想要做突破。第一次呢突破失败，第一次突破失败了，失败了以后呢，它下跌的幅度并不大。它跌幅没有超过整个上升波段的1/2，所以说通过这一点呢，我们可能知道，这有可能股价会继续上升。而第二次上升完以后，你看它又跌回来，在这个下跌区间的时候，它的成交量显著增大，也就是通过这一段呢，我们可以看到弱手比较弱的地方在买，而且在他们以为这要突破了，要狂买，而大的机构在强手方面，他们这时候大量的卖出。卖出完以后，大家可以看到，然后这个股价就迅速的跌回到区间了。
If we look at the specific bars, let's say a bar number 1 and a bar number 2, we could see that on bar number 2, we have somewhat of a same effort, almost the same, number 1, number 2. So effort 2 is the same or slightly decreasing than effort on bar number 1, and yet the result of bar number 2 is less than the result of bar number 1, just because spread on that bar is decreasing. Also close is less favorable, as we have close to close progression that is getting smaller, it's shrinking. So that shows that the result is decreasing. And usually this type of action would mean a short-term bearish bias for the next move.
那么我们从单独 K 线来讲，我们讲两个 K 线，也就是最后就是最大这两个上升 K 线，它给标成了 K 线1和 K 线2。那么 K 线1呢，大家K 线2跟 K 线1比较成交量，K 线2比 K 线1稍微少一点点，但是在这个结果上来说 ，K 线2却比 K 线1少很多。这个结果它是怎么衡量的呢？它是从低价差来衡量，也就是从最低价到最高价这个价差 ，K 线2要比 K 线1短好多。第二个呢，从收线的情况，从收市的情况，那么它从前一次底到前一次的收线到最近一次收线，也就是 K 线2，大家可以看到 K 线1到 K 线2的收线它非常短。从 K 线1来说，从前一天的收市到 K 线1的收市来说，这一段要远远的比 K 线2要大得多。所以说他认为这个就是说结果和努力和结果不符，也就是说我们会出现短期的熊市情况。
The next move has all of the qualities of the sign of weakness. This is where the spread is increasing, and I'm talking about the down spread. This is where the volume signature, or specifically supply, is increasing, and there is some gap action that we could see to the downside. Velocity is increasing to the downside, and we're going through some of the meaningful support areas. And specifically, if we would look at an upsloping structure like this, we probably would be seeing that the next rally after the sign of weakness has this quality of bouncing off the resistance that was created by the upsloping support. And we definitely have a commitment to the downside on this last bar right here, which defines the weakness, the structural weakness that sign of weakness would have.
如果我们再看这个下跌的这段曲线来说，它就完全符合弱势信号形成的下跌过程。然后首先来说呢，它的价差增大，它的速度加快，而且成交量也增高，而且大家可以看到它很多有跳空下跌的情况，而且呢，它也跌破了前期的那个低点构成的支撑线，它跌破了这个支撑线。如果我们大家画一个上斜的交易通道或交易区间的话，大家可以看到它完全跌破了这下面两个的交易区间的底线，这符合弱势信号的特点。而且呢，它在回调的时候、回探的时候、回测遇到了交易区间的这个阻力线，然后又回来，两次都碰到这个下缘，然后返回。
Another way of looking at the sign of weakness is by the increase of the volatility. Look at the true range of all of these bars and compare them to anything that has come before on the reactions. And we don't quite see anything of the same sort. There is nothing on the chart of the same quality. So this increase of volatility, the way how the price moves aggressively to the downside, the volume signature confirming the presence of the selling, suggests that indeed this is a sign of weakness, and we should identify the next rally as the point of recovery or the point of failure.
那另外一个方面呢，我们就可以看这个弱势信号，就是通过这个 true range， 也就是真实价差来看，也就是我们把这个跳空的这部分都要算上。这样一看呢，我们和前期的下跌这个区间不是下跌波段都不一样，它的那个真实价差都非常大。而跌完以后呢，再往看它反弹的这个阶段，这个反弹就是 recover 他说的反弹或者是失败的这个波段来看，那么看这一段的情况是怎么样呢？
Well, let's look into this area. So the first rally comes back into the trading range, and I'm talking about the horizontal range right here. But if we take 1/2, it kind of upthrust over 1/2 of the range and then quickly comes back closer to the support. The next attempts to rally are all very mediocre, and they do fail. There is another short-term weak sign of weakness right here for this latest range right here, and the last point of supply, which basically tell us that there is no power to lift the prices up for the price to rally at this point of time. So therefore, this all are elements of weakness rather than strength.
那我们看一看最后面这段的情况。那么刚才他讲了那个上行的这个通道的情况，也就是说变成了阻力位，把这个挡下来。那么现在我们回到这个平行的这个区间内，平行的区间呢，看到下跌完以后，到弱势信号的时候，它有一段的反弹。这个反弹呢，超过了这个区间的1/2，说可以了。但是它再往下降的，刚超过1/2，立刻就跌回来。跌回来以后，再次2次的反弹的时候都非常非常弱，而且呢，在这个时候它形成了一个底部的一个小区间，到那个后来又2次的时候，它就立刻跌破了一个小区间，然后再往下上行的时候，就形成了这个最后供应点，这个小区间的最后供应点，这个失败再次下降的时候就跌下来了。所以说整个后面的情况来说，我们可以看到它根本无力反弹，这是弱势情况，而不是强势情况。
Because of all of these elements, the elements of the upthrust action, where we see some of the selling, the elements of the sign of weakness, where we see that the selling accelerates to the downside, and it has the elements of institutional selling, the elements of weakness on the subsequent rally, where there is inability of the rally to have more strength and to travel much larger distance. All of that, including the latest bar that basically gaps down and commits to the downside right here, suggest a continuation of this weakness. And if we are going to have some kind of rally here, it probably will be short-lived.
综合这3个情况线来看，也就是前面的上冲回落以后，它的那个大的成交量，然后到弱势信号，突破支撑线，然后再有反弹，这个反弹也比较弱。整个综合这些情况来看，这个情况都是比较弱的，而且包括最后一根K线，这个K线呢，突破了这个情况，是跳空下跌。即使将来会有反弹的话，恐怕反弹也不会很强，都比较虚弱。
One of the ways to confirm your bias is to look at something else, to look at the broad market and to identify maybe other sectors that are having the same type of patterns. So let's look now at the materials.
另外一个情况，看这个 K 线图的话，就是看看其他的区域、其他的这行业，看看他们的情况怎么样，是否和这个行业也基本相似。
And the first thing that catches my eye looking at this long-term chart is that materials definitely were much stronger than the energy sector. We're seeing that out of this area right here in phase B, we have a really good rally that comes back to the highs of this rally right here and not this one. So we definitely see more strength than in energy.
那么我们看到这个上证材料的周线图，那么看到这张图呢，显著的比上证能源的图要强。我们可以看到这一段这个曲线它一直在上升，和这个最后这个上升他说的这个阶段都比能源图要强一些。
We also could see strength in the materials in this area right here. The energy prices for the energy sector are somewhere here. They're already making lower lows. The materials are holding up better, but they also have some of the elements of the potential distribution.
即使包括在最后这个区间的话，这个材料图都会比能源图要强一些，包括能源图现在已经是跌破这个区间了，而材料图呢现在还在这个区间之内。但是整个来看，这个派发区间来看，材料图也有一些个派发的特性。
We definitely see a good quality of the rally, but that rally stops at the resistance. So here is our first change of behavior. We can't commit above the resistance. And on the last attempt to go down, look at the volume signature. The volume actually goes down, telling us that there is less effort to commit to the upside. And the price overcomes the local high just a little bit and does not commit to the upside. So the result is less than what we're anticipating. So that suggests some kind of short-term bearish picture. And after that, we go into this reaction.
我们看到这个区间呢，一开始的这段这个上升，它是质量很好的上升，但是这个上升呢，并没有超过前期的阻力位。这个在这段里面可以分成两个小段来看。第一段时间是没有超过前期的阻力位，它的成交量比较大。在第二次尝试去突破前期的阻力位的时候，它的成交量已经下降了。而这个时候呢，也就是说它的努力是降低的，结果也是减小的。所以我们说它会有短期的熊市情况。
The next area actually has a contracting supply signature, and the spread is contracting as well, so volatility is decreasing. This is favorable for a rally, and we would be expecting that this rally would commit above the area of the resistance that was created in phases A and B, and that would be our measurement of progress. If the rally would fail as an upthrust, then most likely the selling is going to accelerate to the downside, and at the minimum we would retest the localized area of the support.
那么我们看这段下跌的情况，通过这个在这个下跌过程中啊，这个成交量或它的是供应量是减低的，而这个时候呢，我们就这个情况的话，供应量减低的话，那么它有利于价格上升再反弹。那么我看这段继续上升的时候，它就会测试前期的阻力位。我们希望或者是它的意向是突破前期阻力位，但是如果它不能突破的话，那么就形成了上冲回落。上冲回落形成价格在跌回区间的时候，那么它有可能就会比前一次跌的就是咱们说吧，就是说它回到区间的时候，有可能是速度会更大，降的会更多一点，最起码它会测试前期的低点，就是这个它画的这个小区间的低点。
We definitely see that the rally here fails. The price attempts to commit to the upside and then fails, so this is an element of a potential upthrust. Also, the volatility starts to increase relative to everything what we've seen before on the reactions on the way up.
我们也确实看到这次上行失败了，而且呢，在测试前面的这个阻力位的时候都失败了，所以它形成了上冲回落。上冲回落完以后，大家可以看到它的 volatility， 也就是它的波动率，波动性增高了。这个波动呢，比前几次下跌的这个特点，大家看的时候，它的波动都增高。
All right, well, let's look at the daily of this chart.
那我们看一下上证材料的日线图。
So there is a long-term resistance around this area right here. And we're expecting the price to fail in the distribution around this area.
它画了一个长期的阻力线，也就是通过这个周线图的时候，大家可以看到阻力线在那里。那么有这个阻力线的话，我们就有一定的心理准备，有可能，那么这个上行的地方就在这个阻力线附近会失败。
And this is a relatively easy labeling here for us, just because the horizontal rules are all being honored. We see a really good rally with the climactic run at the end on large increase in spread, large increase in volume. So those are the characteristics of the potential climactic run. And this climactic run is being stopped at the buying climax. The first reaction is different than anything that we've seen before on this run. So this becomes a change of character. And the low is being labeled as the automatic rally. The subsequent rally is a secondary test. We are testing the high of the climactic action, and we can't significantly overcome it. There is an upthrust-like action that still brings the price back to the trading range.
这段曲线呢，我们一开始看到前一段是上涨情况，上涨情况是上涨很快，但是在上涨很快的后期呢，我们可以看到一些个高潮的特点。这个高潮的特点包括可能是这个价差增大，成交量增大，然后到后来的时候形成了一个抢购高潮这个点高潮点，然后呢高潮完以后动量加大，它就自动下跌。到自动下跌呢和抢购高潮它们形成了水平可以画两条线，这就是这个交易区间可能的交易区间的一个通道的这个线。然后我们看到自动下跌，这个时候它构成的是什么呢？构成的是一个 change of character， 也就是特性改变。到这里特性改变了，也就是前期的特性改变的它定性，就是因为这段距离比前几次它下跌的幅度都要大，现在就是变成最大的了。然后再往上走的时候，它虽然是突破了前高，但是呢，大家知道这个突破它的质量并不高。两次突破试探完以后，它又跌回到交易区间之内。那么这个突破前高，这个再测试抢购高潮这个高点的这一块，我们把它叫做二次测试。
The next area in phase B has an element of the absorption where there is basically just no selling, and we would be expecting some kind of rally out of this area. But look at the quality of all of the rallies. Look at the quality of the rally that precedes the trading range, the quality of the secondary test rally, the quality of the upthrust rally, and then the quality of the LPSY rally. We see that from the demand signature that there is a contraction of the demand. So demand is going down on each of the rallies. And also, result of all of these rallies is decreasing with each and one of them. Secondary test just makes a slightly higher high and then fails. The upthrust rally tries to commit above the high that was made by the secondary test and fails again. And then an LPSY rally fails as well and becomes a lower high. So there is a progression of failure on each of the rallies that we see being confirmed by the decrease in demand signature as well.
那么我们看一看这二次测试以后的下跌，这段下跌呢是在阶段 B 里面，而这段的特性来说就是说供应减少，也就是这个机构并没有再继续大卖，而这个供应减少没有继续大卖的时候，就形成了一个平滑的转折，然后开始再一步的拉升。这段拉升呢，大家可以看到这个成交量减低了，这段过程中就可以说它的是需求点低。那么我们通过这几次上升拉升的这个质量来看，通过这个抢购高潮之间的拉升，二次测试的拉升，到阶段 C 这个上冲回落的这段拉升和上冲回落以后的这个最后派发点这段拉升来说，我们可以看到它的需求是逐渐减低的，而且它的结果呢，也就是这个拉升的距离，这么来看的话，它也在减低，而且到最后派发点的时候，它的高点已经不能够超过原来的高点了，也就是它的这个距离也在减小了。我们可以看到它的需求的逐步减弱，越来越减弱。
And then look at the reactions. So a change of character reaction has some supply behind it, and we definitely have some supply on the way up that is emerging at the end of the climactic action here. Then there is some kind of decrease of volatility. And then going into the potential phase D, look what happens on the reaction. Supply is coming in and increasing relative to the previous areas. And we have a much better result to the downside. So that also suggests weakness on the reactions, and specifically volatility coming back in phase D, which increases more probability of a more bearish bias than the bullish bias.
那么我刚才看了这个需求的这个情况，那么我再看看调整的这个情况。调整呢，这个供应从哪开始呢？从抢购高潮的后期开始的，供应量加大。然后呢，我们看到这个供应加大以后，也看到它这个供应加大以后的结果怎么样。通过这几次调整的这个幅度和调整波段来看的话，那么到了阶段 C 和阶段 D 的时候，那么它的成交量增高了，也就是供应加大了，而且它的结果，也就是说它下跌的这个幅度、下跌的速度、这个波动情况也加大了，这都符合派发或者是派发的特性。
We mentioned that the materials are stronger than the energy, so we've seen this rally coming back almost to the high of the climactic action, which looks good, but the retest of this rally fails, and then we have a gap to the downside. So being this stronger among all of the sectors might provide us with some cushion where we might have some kind of attempt to rally. But if this is a true distribution, this rally would fail and the price would continue to the downside, as well as it could just fail more on any of the additional news from the US about the tariffs and the whole relationship that China and the US has on the tariffs. This is what's driving this market. This is what's driving this increase of the volatility. It's the news on the tariffs.
刚才提到上证材料指数比上证能源指数要强一点。我们看到这个最后派发点这一段这个反弹，这段反弹呢，它比那能源的反弹也大，而且它反弹到了抢购高潮这一点。然后呢，我们可以看到，但是它也有跳空下跌的情况，而能源呢，它已经跌破了支撑线，而这个材料呢，还在这个支撑线附近。那么有可能，因为它还没有跌破支撑线的话，有可能它会稍有反弹，但是如果它是整个派发情况的话，那么这个反弹也是暂时的，它还会继续往下走。最近的情况，股市情况来说，和中美这个关税这些新闻密切相关，也就整个这一段情况的走势，其实都和中美关税的新闻有密切的关系。
Let's look at the next sector, and this is industrials, and it's very similar in picture to the materials, just slightly different in the way how it got there, but on the right side, the picture is somewhat the same, where we have an attempt to upthrust, overcome the previous highs, and yet the price has failed to commit to the upside, and instead volatility increases to the downside, and we might see a potential sign of weakness that tries to commit below the support, inability to rally, and then a continuation to the downside.
我们看一下上证工业的周线图，这个周线图呢，和刚才材料的图有一些相似之处。我们可以看到，这个图呢，它上证工业试图突破前期高点，它画了2个点，而到最后呢，它是一个上冲回落的企图，也就是试图达到这个阻力位，但它没有达到，然后呢，它开始下降形成了这个上面的区间，这个小区间上面的区间的弱势信号，因为它突破了上面这个小区间的支撑线，然后呢，再反弹的时候，它没有能力反弹到高点，也就是它接近于1/2情况下又开始下跌了。
We would expect that if this is a element of the distribution in this area, that the price would continue its movement to the downside and would retest the lows of the 2016. the possible bullish scenario for us is only a confirmation where the price would come back into the range more significantly, and then we could say that absorption has happened. So we are looking for that confirmation.
如果这段区间是派发的情况下，那么有可能这个股价会继续跌破这个支撑，然后测试前期的低点。如果是说另外一种情况下，我们认为只有在这个中线这个位置，也就是上面这个小区间的支撑线的话，它的上行K 线非常强的时候，我们可能会说那么这个在这个位置吸收完成了，那么股市暂时停止下跌。
Let's look at the daily.
看一下日线图。
And it's also very well-defined trading range. We have the stopping action, climactic action, change of character, automatic reaction, secondary test as a retest of the high, so very similar to the materials, and then attempt to upthrust right here. We actually are not touching the resistance here, only the resistance that was created by the buying climax. And once we touch it, we instantly come back into the range. So these are the elements and characteristics of the upthrust. And then after that, the price goes down on the consistent supply that is slightly increasing over the previous areas that we could see. And there is a definite attempt to commit below the levels of the support, with the subsequent rally being so weak it comes into about 1/2 of the range and acts as a last point of supply.
从日线图呢，我们也看到这个图比较规整，因为规整它是一个水平的这个交易通道或者交易区间。我们可以看到，从抢购高潮完以后，到自动下跌这块比较快，形成了一个特性改变。特性改变完以后呢，然后股价上升，然后比前期的这个抢购高潮的点稍微高一点点，然后价格又回跌到区间之内，这里形成了二次测试。然后到最后这段，我们看到它试图上升超过前期高点，但没有成功。所以说，相对于二次测试那个高点来说，这里是最后派发点，它到达了抢购高潮这个水平，却没有到达二次测试那个前期高点，所以我们把它叫做最后派发点。然后这样降低完以后，我们可以看到最后派发点相对应的成交量和它下跌期间的这个成交量，或者是供应量，要比前一段期间要稍微高一些。而跌破完以后呢，这个弱势信号跌到，因为它跌破了前期的支撑线，所以说我们把这儿说可能的弱势信号。弱势信号完以后，我们再看到它反弹回到交易区间，但这个反弹是非常弱，不到这个最后派发点到弱势信号这段这个波段的1/2。
The last bar, the tail, suggests that there is some demand that is being hidden in this bar, like the bar right here, which suggests that there might be an attempt to rally. And we have to look at the US market, how they're going to close out today, and it seems like, they are on the downside. So is this a weak attempt to, by weak hands, to come in and to try to establish the low here? And we should just see how this rally is going to develop. Is it going to fail really quickly, or is it still going to have some attempt to go up?
最后一个大家看一下最后一个 K 线，最后一个 K 线是锤子线，它有一个长尾，这个长尾巴和弱势信号那个 K 线的长尾巴比较相似。那么弱势信号这个长尾巴导致了价格又涨回了这个区间之内。那么这个长尾巴，最后这个 K 线的长尾巴，会不会是弱手来购买？那么这个情况呢，它会导致什么情况呢？是会再冲回区间之内一点点呢，还是冲回失败，然后继续下跌？大家拭目以待。
But even though we might expect a rally or a quick failure, there are quite a lot of elements of weakness that we see in this area. The upthrust itself, the quality of the reaction to the downside as a sign of weakness, and then the weakness on the subsequent rally of the last point of the supply. So that still suggests that selling is persistent, the sellers are available, and they are selling into any attempts of the market to rally.
从最后一段 K 线，也就是这个锤子线的长尾看，我们虽然是说有可能这个后期的 K 线会上升一点点，而且上升有可能会失败。那么综合情况来看呢，最后这段期间，我们看到它的最后拍发点，然后看到它跌到底下的这个弱势信号，然后虚弱的反弹到最后拍发点，就是最后一个最后拍发点的情况，我们都知道，在整个这段期间之内，供应量非常巨大，有可能供应还会继续，那么有可能价格还会继续走低。
Our last chart is on the discretionary, consumer discretionary. And again, even though the underlying structure looks the same, it has its own characteristics that are very unique to this specific sector. Again, I want to point your attention to the volatility that we had at the end of the down move, decrease of the volatility in the potential phase B, and then increase of this volatility going into this area right here. So that suggests some kind of elements of the distribution that are available in this structure, in this latest structure, and we'll look at that on the daily chart.
最后一张图我们看到的是上证可选，那么上证可选呢和前几张图的情况比较相似，但是呢它有自己的特点，我们大家看一下以后，它在15年下降到16年年初这段时间，它的波动性非常非常大。然后呢，在波动下降到以后，2016到2017的时候，到阶段 B 的时候，我们看到它的这个波动性非常非常小，比较稳定的发展。最近来说，它的波动性又开始加大了。
Even though we talk about the bullish scenarios, we also want to ask ourselves a question. What should happen in this market in order for us to start thinking more in a bullish terms? And we definitely need to just come back and break this resistance right here and to commit to the upside. Something that was done maybe around this area right here, where there was some volatility in this area and then there was a breakout in the commitment. Until we see this, our assumption is going to be that we're going to probably retest some of the lows that we have seen prior.
最后这张图我们看，我们已经谈了它的强势情况和弱势情况，也就是它的牛的情况或者是熊的情况。那么牛的情况的话，除非是我们在这看到它迅速又冲回到它画的那条那个斜线，下行的斜线，这个突破这个斜线，而且突破这个阻力线，这个有可能和前面它这段情况它勾出来的2013到2014这段途径比较相似，这种情况是属于牛的情况。如果没有的话，那么继续沿着这条趋势线下行的趋势线波动，然后跌破阻力线的话，那么它有可能就会重新测试底下的两个低点，低位水平。这是熊市情况。
Let's look at the daily chart.
我们看一下上证可选的日线图。
And on the daily chart, I have here an upsloping range. So we see how a lot of the points on this chart connect with the support and with the supply line.
那么在这张图上呢，它画了一个上行的交易区间，或者是咱们所说的通道。那么这个它用的这个趋势线呢，这个通道线，可以给大家看到，它碰触了很多或者接近于很多的这个阻力点或者是支撑点。
We see a very clearly defined upthrust action where the price commits temporarily above and then comes back into the range. We also see that in phase D, we have the increased volatility. It's been shown to us in the spread action, in the gap action, in the distance that the reactions travel.
那么在这一点呢，我们看到图上有一个非常明显的在阶段 C 的上冲回落，上冲回落的它突破了前期的这个高点，也突破了这个阻力线，但它迅速又回到交易区间之内。在 Phase D 我们看到这几次下行波段的话，它的特点就是它的波动性或者是 volatility 加大了，它迅速而且它的速度也快，然后到达了这个弱势信号，在这是阶段 D 的特点。
Having said all of this, we definitely see some strength that is exhibited here more than on the previous charts. On the rally up, so the rally comes to the point of the previous highs, which is much stronger than anything that we've seen before. And then this low right here creates a higher low and creates a somewhat of a much more significant higher low than on the charts that we've previously seen. So definitely short term, that shows a little bit more strength than other sectors.
虽然我们看到了这个波动性比较大，但是在 Phase D 的时候，我们看到了一点点的那个稍稍比牛的情况，比前几张图牛的情况。首先来说，最后一段时间的这个上涨，它的上涨幅度比较大，它接近了最后派发点的这几个位置。而且呢，它在下跌波段的时候，这个最后的这条线，别的指数都是要么是超过了最前面的低点，要么你就是跌破了前面的低点，而这个呢，它还在前面的低点之上。
So again, this last bar that has this demand tail is very similar to the bar that we see here at the end. Also maybe here. So this becomes a question of would we have some kind of rally from this place? Would it give us an opportunity, to come back into the trading range? That is the question that we need to address next week as we see the price reaction in this area. And it would be logical to close out this gap right here. And as the rally develops, if it develops, we definitely need to look at the character or the quality of this rally and make a determination about the next action just based on this.
大家也看到了最后一个 K 线，它有一个长尾巴，他们英文把它叫做需求的尾巴。而这个尾巴呢，在前几次的低点的时候，大家都可以看到，而前几次低点这个尾巴都起始了另外一次的上升。那么这个次大家看到这个低点这个长尾巴会不会也起始一次返回这个交易区间的上升呢？我们不知道，我们要拭目以待。有可能，那么如果有的话，在起始这个反弹或者是这次上升，有可能会填补这个跳空，或者有可能会继续上行。那么也就是说，这次反弹或者是上升的质量是至关重要的，是我们需要观察的。那么也许下周我们可以去观察一下如果有上升的话，那么这上升的质量如何。
All right, well, that's it for today. Thank you again so much for joining us for this session. We're looking forward to the next session. Thank you to Govind for translating, and we're looking forward to your emails, to your feedback. Have a profitable week, and we'll talk to you in a week. Thank you.
感谢大家。那么今天就讲到这里。希望大家把自己的意见或建议，然后通过邮件或者是跟帖的方式告诉我们。也感谢国本今天的翻译。那么希望下周跟大家再见。好，谢谢大家。
Thank you. Bye bye.
谢谢大家，再见。